processes. Even though they accomplish virtually the same kind of end result, the process behind them are two completely different things. Because the product ends up being completely different. They exist in two different ages. These things don't exist in a vacuum, and to compare them is largely a difficult thing to do, maybe even impossible. And I'm very sympathetic to this position. In other words, the idea of the patch only makes sense now, guys. And so people are really just discovering this, and I think people do it well. Some developers do it well, and some developers and publishers do it very poorly. And that's the real answer here, right? That's what many of you guys have said. The first thing that got brought up by many of you is that it depends on the developer. Some developers look at something and say, this is done, this is ready, we're ready to make this work, and then the publishing issue works itself out and life goes on. Doesn't necessarily happen for everyone else. Lastly, Siobhan Lord talked about crowdsource model and how it's been appropriated by the masses. So in other words, you look at something like Minecraft, which is unabashedly crowdsourced in how it fixed the game. Now you have games, I think, that are in publishers and developers that are surreptitiously doing this as they move forward. You know, with something like, I'm not just talking about public betas here, but they say, okay, the game is good enough, we're going to release it to the public now. We know that there's going to be about a 10 to 15% bug rate of people that come back in and say, and that's high, that will be massive. Normally it's probably 2 to 5% of people that are going to come back and say, this is a little conspiracy theory-esque, right? But I think it's true. Say people are going to, there's a certain expectation that people are going to come back and say, this is broken, we need to fix this, and it's going to get posted on forums and blah, 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 blah. And they'll be able to go, oh shit, look, we didn't fix this. Let's go back and fix this. I think that's absolutely true. I think the crowdsourced mentality will inevitably not be able to service all games and will not be able to work for everyone, and I think people will revolt with that. But it bespeaks the idea of the good enough mentality, and something that is good enough at the end of the day, I think, is what game developers and game publishers are striving for. It's that kind of sweet spot where a game is good. Skyrim is a perfect example. Skyrim isn't broken. Skyrim doesn't, you know, if you play Skyrim out of the box, you're going to have a complete experience right from the get-go. But with the patches, with everything that's done, it's just enhanced that functionality, cleaned it up, polished it even further. And I would argue Skyrim is one of the most polished games Bethesda's ever released. And Bethesda is not known for their spit polish, right? So there you go. Here's another thing I want to mention before I move on to my own little thoughts, which I've really scattered throughout this whole concept here and this discussion. QA testing. How people spend money on QA testing. If you spend any amount of time with QA testing and you know what this is about, you start to understand that it's not necessarily about fixing every bug. What it's about is identifying core problems that then get categorized in many different ways. This gets categorized as something that is acceptable, tolerable, acknowledged but tolerable, right? Versus something that is critical and this game cannot ship without fixing. There is a spectrum along which every company has a criteria of assigning the criticality of those kinds of bugs. And as a result, what ends up happening is, depending on how that categorization happens, that's how a bug gets fixed. And that's not a question of money, folks. Although sometimes it does, I hate to be that open. Sometimes it is a question of money. I take that back. But most of the time, it's a question of criticality. We can't launch the game unless these things are fixed. And then as we work down, these are nice to have, icing on the cake kind of things, where this is okay to launch the game, right? And what I think, if I'm going to get into my own opinion, is that there is a sweet spot between those two things. I never expect the game to be completely done in terms of it's finished, every single bug is weeded out, and therefore the game is perfectly working and not unbroken. I think that something like a Super Nintendo game, you know, can be experienced in almost every single way and can be polished and worked so that it's a complete experience. Even though even that's difficult to do. Something like Chrono Trigger is very, very difficult to play test. That you can't break it by shifting time without completing this task or completing that task, what have you. But if you look at the experiences that we have today, they're so massive, they're so huge, and we love it that way, that we've created this world within you know, video gaming that we've created. We want it. We want these worlds. But that means they also will never be completely done. And if they're never really completely done, what it means is that we have to look in terms of that scale of continuity, that continuum between bugs that are critical and bugs that are icing on the cake. If a game launches with a few of these, one or two of them, it's game over. It doesn't matter what the rest of it is like. And I think there is a sweet spot. If you can hit that sweet spot on that continuum, you're in great shape. And that's my opinion. My opinion is, as long as we can maintain that sweet spot, and the sweet spot for most games ends up being on that continuum, and most of the bugs that are there are still just icing on the cake, you're going to get no complaints from me. It means we get games on time. It means we get fun experiences that are unaffected by serious bugs, and it means that we can continue to have games that are crowdsourced that don't affect the way that games get produced. So anyway, those are my thoughts. What an awesome conversation, guys. This I didn't expect it to be this big. I also didn't expect it to go for 2 weeks, so maybe I was a little out of my own mind in thinking that that I'd be able to shoot a video as I was moving. But literally this time last week I was actually in a truck driving up here. In any case, as always, I want to say thank you to all of you for your contributions to the comments section this week. This brings us to a question for next week, and I promise you this will be next week. So in moving, I changed locations. I started to realize how cool it was that the experience could be on a platform by virtue of a software as a service after I moved from place to place. As in, I jump in and I use something like Pandora, and all of a sudden, just because I'm in a new location, doesn't fundamentally change the experience of Pandora. Xbox Live was the same way. I came up here, I plugged in my Xbox, it jumped on, Xbox Live is there to greet me. It says, hey, it even tells me, hey, you changed locations. You okay? Everything's all right? Good, good, good. You last logged in from here. Is everything okay? And I started to think about how, we pay for a lot of these services versus not paying for some of them. And so my question for you guys for next week, the Weekly Wringer, is this. Are you okay with paying for a service like Xbox Live? I can't wait to see where you guys are going to take this, because it's going to go all over the place, because there are pieces of Xbox Live that you're probably willing to pay for and probably others that you're not. But in any case, maybe you're not happy about that you would pay for. But I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. Are you willing to pay for Xbox Live service? And is that something that you would like to see in the future as well with future gaming platforms? Anyway, again, apologies for the delay, but I think you guys can understand moving across the country is a big deal. It's not something that happens every week. Now that I'm locked in, I'm ready to rock and roll with the Weekly Wringer, and we should be back every single week from this point forward. We're also got some big changes coming with the site. As you know, we're on Echo Screen Live. This never should have been an update platform, but in any case, we're on hiatus with Echo Screen Live until September, but there are some awesome things coming with that as well. And I think you might see some cool changes coming with the site as well moving forward. So, folks, I know that we're a little lean on content right now. That's going to change, but it's going to change in a big, big way. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for being a part of the Clan of the Grey Wolf. As always, I am the Commodore, and there is no reset button.